Welcome back to the Let's Talk podcast. I am Brian Furtado, co-founder and CEO at Let's Talk. And today we're getting into something a lot of HR and talent leaders are quietly frustrated about, but not always talking about it openly. Employer branding content is everywhere right now. Careers pages, LinkedIn posts, employee testimonials. CEOs are messaging about their culture. Companies are producing more of it than ever, and yet somehow it feels like it's landing less. Candidates are scrolling past it. They're going to Glassdoor instead, Reddit, asking someone if they know anything from the inside. They're verifying. So, what is actually happening? I think we've confused visibility with credibility. And today's conversation is about that gap. What does it actually take to build trust with candidates in a market where they're fact checking everything you put out? My guest today is Khunmir Syed, Head of Employer Brand and Recruitment Marketing at Schneider Electric. Let's get on to it. Hello, Khunmir, and welcome to the Let's Talk podcast.
And thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So we'll get on straight to it. Now, here's a number that should bother every HR leader in the room. And I think you probably would know this. Now, 86% of job seekers research company reviews and ratings before applying. I've just done a little bit of research myself, right? So candidates aren't just reading your career page and clicking apply. They're going elsewhere to verify. Yet, employer brand investments have jumped up by 45% in 2024 alone. Companies are spending more, but candidates are not trusting so much. So that's the gap we need to talk about. My question to you is, why does it feel like it's not really hitting the mark? What's the issue there?
I think you've got right into it, I must say. So yeah, let me just kind of give a little background to the industry also that I come from, right? So typically, right, if you look at content, it's evolved over a period of time, right? So I come from the advertising industry, and from there I've been on the brand side, and then finally onto the employer brand. So I've seen the evolution of content at different stages, and of course newly onto employer brand as well. So what I feel when I see the content that's being generated by different brands, I'm not gonna probably name them here, but it feels very staged, right? In terms of if you take employee testimonials, for example, first 10 seconds, audience has something called as the bullshit detector. They can tell you whether the person who's speaking on the other end is genuine or not, right? That's how far we've come with content. And earlier it used to be, oh wow, look at this fancy testimonial, very well polished, very well generated. But obviously people did know the backstory of it, right? Which means the script is given to the person who's reading it out and all of that. So now the audience here being the potential employee obviously sees this and recognizes instantly that this is not authentic. Where can I find authentic voices? Where can I find people who are a bit unfiltered, who have worked in this company? And that could be, the likes of your Glassdoor, Ambition Box, which is Naukri's platform as well. So there would be the authentic voices that they're finding, and not so much onto the brand pages. But I'll come to the point where I think I'm sure you'll have your follow-up questions where how do we build that authentic content per se, but the evolution of it has happened so much that instantly you can recognize whether the content is authentic or not.
So that what you said was absolutely bang on from the employee perspective, right? I'm just going to stay for a while on the employer bit. And I think there's something deeper going on underneath that as well. Because if we look at where intent is going versus where candidates are actually going to, like verify, are companies mistaking visibility for credibility in employer branding?
Yes, not just visibility, but also the volume as well, right? So, I mean, if the company is posting a lot of content and, probably one out of that 10 pieces of content works, but still those 9 pieces of content are still out there in the market, right? So the credibility of the company, if you take the law of averages, automatically comes down. So that way, I think the companies should focus on creating less but more authentic content. I think that's the way forward.
Now that we've spoken about the employer bit, now I'll come to what
Yeah.
you were saying. So, okay,
Yeah.
let's look at what candidates are actually doing now, right? So, a couple of numbers that I have. So, 53% of job seekers look for more company information after reading a job ad.
Hmm.
They're not stopping at the job description, they're going deeper. And when they go deeper, candidates are reading how companies respond to reviews before making any decision. So, it's not just about the content you put out, which you were just talking about, it's about everything you don't control, right?
Hmm.
Like the glass
Hmm.
door and the ambition box. And
Hmm.
because companies don't have a control over that. So, how has candidate behavior, in your opinion, actually changed when it comes to evaluating employers?
Right. I mean, it's not changed so much, but it's evolved slightly, I would say, right? So the first thing, let's talk about you and I, man. If we want to research or if you want to get an offer from a company, right? The first thing that you do is you put in the company name on, your search tab, and the first things that come out, first two links would be your ambition box and Glassdoor. So that would be the first top two pages that kind of hit the first top two searches, right? And that instantly tells you that your SEO and your SEM bit instantly tells you that a lot of people are directly searching for reviews, and that's where your content should reside as an employer as well. So not just your LinkedIn page, which is traditionally what used to happen, but also on these pages, which are now giving you that flexibility to put out authentic content out there as well. And you were talking about content that you cannot control, which is very right, but there are things that you can respond to as an employer, which means that if there is a bad review, for example, if somebody has not had a very good experience, you can choose to respond to it in a very nice, authentic manner. And then, suppose you're searching for that particular company and thinking of joining that particular company, you see this response from the employer and say, oh, okay. So I think they're trying to correct themselves or they're trying to kind of, at least be honest about it, right? So that's what matters. And that's the content that kind of matters as well.
In fact, on that very note, I think candidates can even see BS on the reply that companies are
Yes.
giving. Because most
Yes.
of the time, a lot of companies tend to just do a templatized answer,
Absolutely.
which on its own is bad. So, it kind of sounds like the research process has shifted in the sense that there is more research being done
Mm.
by candidates and or by the generation, right? Which raises the obvious question. What are candidates trusting more right now? What brands say or what employees and platforms are revealing?
No, of course, it can't be just one thing, I would say, right? So it can't be just looking at employee reviews and that's pretty much what it is. But if you see, there are certain companies, right, which have extremely mediocre reviews, and you'd see that consistency. You'd see like certain words that pop out of each reviews, for example, saying that work-life balance and work-life balance, and you notice this in, say, at least about 10, 15 reviews, then you know for a fact that that can be trustworthy, where there's somebody who's talking about work life balance, which is not really happening in that company, right? And that's probably affecting the ratings as well. Now you can even break it down into certain aspects, certain different aspects of, whether it's verticals within a certain company. If you take an example of a big giant like IBM, right? So they have not just one culture, but different subcultures within their brand as well. And people who would want to join, say, the services arm of IBM would probably go and check out the services page, right? So the sub page of IBM and then see the culture over there. So that way, I feel, you need to recognize the pattern, which I think the potential employees are doing, the candidates are doing, and seeing that pattern. And then that's obviously more believable than, of course, the companies who are putting out their content on social. But at the same time, there are good companies who are actually producing very honest content, and that kind of reflects things that are not actually, sometimes that kind of get hidden in these places like Glassdoor. So that the other half aspect of it is covered in social. So it has to be complementary to each other. But I would say the ratio is about 60-40.
Mhm.
60 being the trustworthiness of it comes from reading different reviews online, and then of course the 40% of it would be mostly the generated content in some of these pages. But not all companies are the same, I would say. Again, like disclaimer, not all companies are the same.
we've established the trust gap is real and candidates are doing their homework. But, I've always wondered why more companies aren't really catching up with the gap. Like, because the content keeps coming. And I'll give you an
Mm,
example.
mm,
And it's on the very same lines that you've mentioned about the work-life balance. There was a company, they kept telling us that, we got some bad reviews. Work-life balance is one of them. And they did not know how to tackle with that. And we said, look, obviously the role that you guys hire for or people that you're working with uh, is demanding the work time and effort and all of that. Why are you shying away from telling people that requires you to give a little more time than all of that and start talking about it right from your JD?
mm.
Why do you want it to be a surprise when someone comes and joins? Why don't you already say that in the JD? So then when people are looking at the job description, they know that this job demands for it. And so which means that if I have applied for it, I know of it from the get-go.
No, that's an excellent point, Brian, because I've seen one of the brands actually do it. They put it out on their careers page. We're not for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's the statement, right? On the careers page, we're not for everyone. If you want X, Y, Z, whatever that is, they put that out. We are the place for you. But we're not for everyone is the first statement that you read on the careers page. Imagine being that bold and putting that out.
Yeah.
And you're right. I think more
For us,
companies
it
should
worked.
do it.
For us, it worked because this was a company in Australia. And so it absolutely worked because the kind of people that started applying for the job
Right.
already knew in their head that this role that I'm applying for demands a little more than maybe another company. Surely this compensation factor and all of those things and other benefits that are connected to it, right? Because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't just say that the job demands well, but you're going to be below market, then no,
Yeah.
then that's another whole problem.
Yeah.
So
True.
now, here's something telling. Employee voices on social media outperform corporate handlers. LinkedIn data shows employee shares deliver roughly twice the click through rate compared to brand posts. So,
Mm,
candidates are literally engaging more with employee content than with anything the brand is putting out officially. And yet, most employee employer branding budgets still go towards polished branded content. That's a mismatch, which is exactly what you're saying. So, what's one piece of employer branding content you've seen that felt genuinely real and maybe one that felt completely manufactured? You can go and tell me the name of the one that's genuinely real, and we'll not talk about the other one.
Okay, I think I can start with the first one, right? So the one that completely felt real. So honestly, Brian, I think a lot of my colleagues in the employer brand industry will agree that that award-winning piece of content is still in progress for a lot of brands. So which means that you see these fabulous ads, right? So you see this wonderful storytelling in the ads. We're still evolving on the EB side. Mainly, I think you can whether you blame it on budgets or whether you blame it on the evolution of the industry, which is over the last 10 years. But that piece of content is still being created, right? I mean, as we speak. But there are a few examples that I found really well. I mean, I don't know if you've seen LinkedIn producing some of this wonderful content for employer brand, for their employer brand, and they had a very unique employee mascot called the llama, and basically it's the llama at the workplace, and it was quite unfiltered at the same time as well. I think you should definitely check that one out. I felt that was one of good content pieces that kind of came out recently as well. The second one, I think it was a larger campaign, was for Canva. So when Canva was coming to India, right? So Canva has predominantly been outside of India, and they were actually launching in India per se. It wasn't exactly an core EB film, but they showcased something that happened inside. I mean, it was a wonderfully scripted film where a Canva employee is about to leave, and the others who make it special using Canva itself, using the tool itself, they plan a party for him. And how do they plan that whole party itself? And Canva wasn't exactly a total 100% employer brand film, and it was a very well scripted one. So, using different tools within Canva, they kind of showed that piece of content as well. So that's a really nice one when they entered the India market. So I think Canva and LinkedIn, I think these are the two brands who do employee content really, really well.
I'm glad you're speaking about content and platforms like Canva. And I'm wondering if part of the problem is that. Like we've started equating output with effort, right? Our
Mm.
company is overproducing content to the point where it's actually eroding trust rather than building it, because you see, creating content is now becoming, or at least people think that, oh, I've got access to Canva. I can just go and put in stuff and then boom, boom, boom. Every day, every day there's a piece of content that's coming out, right? So what do you think? What's your views on that?
There's a very famous line. I don't know if I should say it here. There's a marketer in each of us. Just keep that marketer within you is what somebody said. Because
I'm going to put it on our
I think I stole it from one of my people on LinkedIn feed, right? I think it was Pinkesh or somebody who had put this out. It was a wonderful line, and that is true because with subjective fields like employer brand, social media marketing, everybody's a marketer, right? So they come up with ideas left, right, and center. And the thing is, they think that this idea will 100% work. Why don't you just try it out? And when we kind of give that whole structure, framework, all of that back, they say, okay, we don't have the budgets for it or whatever. Can you do it in AI or use
Yeah,
some of the tools that are going on now? But
yeah.
sometimes that's probably not best for the brand as well. Even though I'm all for experimenting and all of that, producing authentic content, I'm 100% there, right? So producing authentic content, employee generated content, EGC, which is quite a used term nowadays as well, which is employee producing their own content, and then of course that being out there for brand social. I'm all for that as well. But this whole thing of whatever idea comes to your mind, just produce it. I mean, there is EVP for a reason, right? I mean, your value proposition for a reason. It has to fit within that value prop. If it doesn't fit within that value prop, what's the piece of content even doing out there? You have to ask that question and send it back to that person, whoever's asked you to produce this. And sometimes, as EB teams, we do get carried away and see that okay, there's trending content that's out there. I should make something for this particular day, whether it's Engineers Day, Mother's Day, whatever day, right? But if it's not fitting within your brand, why would you
Don't
even do
force
that?
it. Yeah, just don't force it. No, I completely agree with you. And look, I think companies need to really think what actually builds credibility today, right? If you really feel that that is something that you want to bring about as an essence, as an emotion within the company, then yes, please go for it. But just for the sake of putting a post out, no, right? A lot of marketing teams currently thrive. On technology, and they use that for culture and proof. And the word proof keeps coming up. Like a lot of people start using that nowadays in their everyday works and ERGs, and not storytelling, not aesthetics, proof. Now, on the flip side, and here's another number I will throw,
Mm,
34% of companies still lack metrics to even measure return on investment. So a third of companies can't even tell if their content is working. That's a
mm,
pretty significant blind spot, right?
mm.
Now, if you were auditing an employer branding content, what were the first two things you check? So this is somebody listening to us saying, okay, here are the two things I need to look out for.
Yeah, yeah. I think number one, Brian, we spoke about it right before this, which is whether that piece of content should be interesting enough. I think that interesting enough, I can't stress enough on this because boring content, even if you put your paid media behind it, it won't get you the returns required. So I think the interesting factor, it doesn't have to be out of the world or whatever, but whether it's got that piece of hook or not, like the first 10 20 seconds, it's so important on social, right? And the content frame itself, which is reducing, the length of the videos is reducing every single day. So all of that combined, I think, would be the first factor, I would say. The second one, in terms of that being aligned to your value prop, which is either your employee value prop or your talent value prop, which is if it's suppose it's a bit for digital within a company, digital talent within a company. So within the digital talent, you have your talent value proposition that you've kind of framed for that. Is it really aligning to that value proposition is something that you'll probably need to check as well. So these are the two major checks. But at the same time, I would say the ROI is measured where nowadays, where you put it out and see organically whether it's performing or not, 9 out of 10 people are not going to see your content. You will need to put media money behind it to see the actual performance of the content. So that's a very important point that a lot of times that company takes for granted, saying that, hey, we're not gonna, we're gonna see it organically how it performs. If it's doing well, we'll probably put the money behind it. But 9 out of 10 times, your own employee is going to see this content, not the potential employee which you want to see, right? So for that person to see, you'll need to put the money behind it, and that's when the ROI will actually be reflected, right? So which means the number of leads that you want out of that particular video or post that you put out. So media money is something that a lot of people do miss out as well when you talk about ROI.
I also think, and I'll add to that, I also think there
Sure.
is another set of
Yeah,
people that
please.
is very important, and they're leaders. Leaders
Mm.
always come up in this conversation, right? Because there's a
Yeah.
difference between being visible and actually having something real to say. So, what role do you think leaders realistically play in shaping employer branding content?
No, I think a large role, and 100% large role, because a lot of them have great following, right? And I've worked with a couple of them who've got like amazing followers, not just on LinkedIn per se, but also in the industry outside, where they talk in different forums, whether they do appear in different podcasts as well. So all of that credibility is definitely there. Again, now the question is how much of that is personal brand versus company's brand. So now you see the same leader pushing out company content versus the same leader pushing out 5 leadership traits that a person should have. That getting maybe 6 or 7x ROI versus compared to your company content. So there needs to be a balance. Or you tailor the content for that leader to put it in his or her tone of voice that it seems more authentic enough, and it's not just that nowadays you have your tools which tell you, okay, this is a ready-made piece of content, sir, ma'am, can you just put this out? You can't do that, which means if a person is speaking in a certain tone of voice, that adaptability for that content has to be there in that tone of voice as well, to feel, because the audience knows, then they feel cheated, then the engagement automatically goes down on your company posts versus personal posts will still stay up. So leaders do play a very important role. Again, the whole mix of how many pieces of content do I give that leader in a month to put out is a big thing that you should consider. It can't be that you give them 5 pieces of content, tell them every single day push out my content. It can't be that. Again, the other bit where if there is good content which is relatable to that leader or that vertical, then definitely you should give it to him or her to kind of push it out. If it's not relatable, something which is, there's no value add if of that leader pushing it out, then don't give that leader to push out that content. So all of these checkpoints, but leaders are definitely have a large part to play when you're pushing out employer brand.
True. I think leaders, there's so many aspects and facets to that, right? Because a lot of incoming employees also look at leaders saying that, I would like to mentor or be mentored, or, as part of this leader demographic is concerned, because then that gives me an opportunity from a learning and development perspective. So I I think leaders in a very large way
Mm,
help to build that employer brand. But
absolutely.
I'm going to shift this to where this is all heading. And I'm picking up from exactly what you've said, because there are people who are now getting pieces of content, and they're using that piece of content without asking any questions and believing it. And you know who I'm talking about, right? Because I think the next couple of years are going to force. So AI integration in
Yeah.
employer branding is growing. Not just growing, but people are not questioning. Another number that I'll give you, 78% year over year. That's where the AI integration is going to be, is what it's looking at. That's a massive number. And at the same time, trust is on an all-time low. So now Edelman Trust Barometer 2025 found that besides your own employer, no institution is fully trusted to address discrimination. So we're in this moment where AI is scaling content production faster than ever,
Mm,
and candidates are more skeptical than ever. That's the collision course, right?
yeah.
So, does AI generated content strengthen employer branding, or is it diluting trust further?
Well, it depends on how you use AI, right? So, or whether you use AI end to end to just mass produce content, obviously it's gonna dilute your brand. But if you use it like smartly, where you use it for initial ideation, right? So, where you talk about 5 ideas for XYZ occasion, or if you use it for purely from an ideation perspective and as a base, then obviously AI is helping you out because that
Yes.
large, the starting point, Brian, where where you and I have been there, where we are ideating for a campaign. You're stuck in the first stage, right? Where should I start? Give me that starting point. That starting point AI can give you for sure. But beyond that, where the uniqueness, I've seen it in multiple occasions. You know that it's written by AI when it comes out, and you know that it's written by AI, and then when it starts with the statements, it's more than this. It's larger than whatever. Then
Yeah.
it's written. So those certain prompts, you can pick that up instantly, and a lot of people can pick that up instantly as well. So that uniqueness, obviously, because it's obviously searching and the internet, getting you those prompts that you've asked for. The uniqueness of it, the creativity aspect of it, where how do you use that base to make something unique out of it, is up to you
Correct.
as a brand. So if you use that properly, which is like, with great power comes great responsibility, use that like properly and not just copy and paste it, I think you'll be fine. It'll only enhance and improve your productivity of the team as well, because we all know that employer brand teams are very small, right? So, and to
In
produce
some
good
cases,
content,
it's probably one person.
one person. Yeah, exactly. Right. So for that person to who's an individual contributor to use this, obviously it's going to help, right? I mean, even if it is, if it's your nano banana and then you're kind of trying to get an image sort of mood board in place, that's going to help you out for sure. But the final aesthetic, final copy content of it, you'll need to put that little masala in. It's not going to come from AI.
And if I zoom out from AI, what's something in employer branding content that everyone is doing as of today, but in your opinion, this is not going to work 2 years from now?
Unpopular opinion, employee testimonials.
Why? I'm very intrigued. Go for it.
Because obviously it's getting more and more, like, what do you call, overtly produced as we speak, right? So you need, okay, let me put it this way: straightforward employee testimonials are not going to work 2 years from now. You'll need to put in that little twist of, whether it is a concept of how do you capture the employee testimonial in a nice creative way. That's gonna obviously be the way forward, because straightforward person sitting talking in front of the camera about how wonderful this place is to work is not going to work 2 years from now. It needs to be something a little more different, because like I said before, people know that it's overtly manufactured. People know that obviously if you're going to put a person in front of the camera, that person's going to speak well about your company as well, right? So there's no ROI for that piece of content. That's why I feel that please, let's get done with that straightforward piece of comms, but use more creative ways. It can be conversations between two employees. It can be something else as well, right? So there are different ways that the creative industries are showing us content. So why can't we be creative in the employer brand and produce that content?
And I'm going to reiterate that. So whoever is watching this or listening this, you have a person in front of you, there's a camera, in front of you, there's three people, and they're asking you questions. And guess what? They're asking you about how good is your relationship with the agents, with the company that you work for. Are you going to say, you guys are shit? You're never going to say that.
You're never going to say that. Exactly my point.
Yeah.
Exactly my point, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, that's a whole other episode if you want to talk about that, right? Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go on to something where we've literally come in from the. I still talk about COVID. So after 2 years, restructuring, economic restrictions, burnout, trust in leadership, at the moment I feel is at an all-time low. That's the context we're operating in, which is why there is so much of employer branding content, testimonials all out there. It's getting this wrong or higher now than they've ever been. What's one thing companies should stop doing in employer branding content immediately? Now, 2 years from now on, we say
Hmm.
don't do testimonials,
Hmm.
or at least start working towards not doing it. But what should they do now? Like stop now.
Stop now. I don't think there's enough content for us to stop now, to be honest, Ryan. Because I think maybe, I would say, yeah,
Can
I
I
think,
rephrase? Can I
yeah,
rephrase? Instead
yeah,
of
go ahead,
saying
go ahead.
stop now, the instead of saying don't do what you're doing, um, what should the focus be? The focus should be listening, or the focus should be showing?
I think the focus should definitely be listening as well. Whether it is your platforms like Glassdoor, like Ambition Box, where you're listening to employee reviews, and then of course, how are you solving for it, right? How are you solving for whether it's through a campaign, which you can solve for, right? The myths about what the person has written, saying that, oh, this XYZ is not, and it might not be true in some cases. So you can actually solve for that with your campaign. So I think listening, I think you, like you rightly said, can be the biggest thing that we should be doing, then mass producing content, which a lot of them are doing. So I think stop doing like, I need 5 posts in a week and let's produce them, versus, okay, if there is nothing to talk about, don't talk about it, listen, and then produce content when it's necessary to produce content.
Let's ask you a harder one, and I promise you this is probably going to be my last hard one. What's one uncomfortable shift leaders actually need to make if they want their employer brand to stay credible?
This is a hard one again, like you said. Um, I think just being more aware about what employees are talking about, even though I'm sure employer brand teams do present data on a regular basis. But I think if you talk about them being actively involved in posting companies' content, whether to solving from it from a personal brand aspect as well, right? So they can, through their personal brand, at least a certain number of people, then consciously maybe they can do that even more, because I'm sure for a leader there are 10 business priorities. 8 out of the 10 times that it gets missed out, whether you want to sort of post a certain piece of content which can maybe influence the next hire, right? Your piece of content, it takes 7 or 8 pieces of content to actually influence a hire, right? So typically, but that piece of content can be your first or the second or the third for that employee. So I think that importance of your voice can be a lot more. Even though there are people like LinkedIn, Naukri that are regularly conducting leadership sessions on thought leadership and how they can actually influence and all of that. I feel setting time out to just post a piece of content can be something as simple as that leaders can do.
Okay, this is going to be my last question to you. And I'm only asking this is because employer branding in India, to a very large extent, is pretty much still in the nascent stage. As you said, it's evolving. For people who are watching this, and I get this a lot because I have been working in employer branding internationally for over a decade now, but I'm now in India. I'm working on this. When I tell people that I'm into employer branding, I get a face that I know exactly what they're thinking, because they're thinking, what is that? According to you, what is the difference between employer branding and product branding?
I was at this Indeed conference recently, Brian, and there was just one line that defined it. Your brand is your employer brand, which is eventually what it is, right? So your brand is your employer brand. So there is literally no difference right now
Yeah.
between product and EB that you call it. So earlier, maybe when I think you and I had started off, there was a clear differentiator where we had a set of values for employer brand, where you said I've had a set of values for this for the product brand as well, but your employer brand is your brand at the end.
I've spoken about this so many times that when you are creating your employee value proposition, also look at your customer value proposition and try and see that how can you marry your
Yeah,
employee value proposition
absolutely,
to your customer value proposition,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
A very, very classic example I can give you, and I don't think it's fair, but it happened, is especially during COVID, a lot of people started saying that I do not want to buy Chinese products,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because everybody started connecting the virus to China, and everyone said that no. And that is the brand. And that's exactly what you've just said. Your brand is your employer brand.
Employer brand. Exactly,
And
exactly.
that's, I'll sum that up over there. But
Yeah.
before we wrap, I just want to say thank you to you, Khudmeet, for
No,
this.
no. Thanks,
This
thanks,
is
Brian, for having me.
exactly, yes, this is exactly the kind of conversation that needs to be had more often.
Absolutely.
Honest, grounded, and actually useful. So that's really what Let's Talk is also built around. And we exist because there's a gap between what companies say about themselves and what people actually experience working there. And that gap is where trust breaks down, right? Because We've spoken about that now. So a little thing about Let's Talk, we turn the truth of work into employer brand people's trust. Candidates choose and businesses can measure. So we go in, we uncover what people are truly experiencing at work, shape that into credible employer promise, and then bring it to life across
Nice.
leadership, across communication, recruitment marketing, and employee experience. Not just content, the whole thing.
Nice.
So
Very nice.
today's conversation has got everybody thinking about what their employer brand, where it stands, where it's landing, the way they think. That's worth exploring. I suggest come find us on LinkedIn, search Let's Talk, follow the page, and you'll see more of these conversations, the research, the thinking, and the work we're putting on. Everything we do starts with the truth of work, and that's where we keep bringing you such interesting conversation. I will say thank you, Kudmit. That's it for today. Until next time, I will see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.